think all three of you guys I've collabed with to one way or the other. I think Kat I probably collab with the most because I was able to collab with her virtually and actually in person. And Kat has the same kind of very thorough, very detailed oriented personality that I do at the pro level in this creative space. Because I have it in the business space, but she had it in the creative space, and I was like, oh, she can see all of the details that has to go into the creative process versus me. My initial approach to 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 the creative storytelling has always just been a one man show. And being a photographer, it's kind of easy to do that at first. But once you start getting into video, once you start getting into actually storytelling, you start realizing the importance of having a director or a producer and a writer in in the room to help guide everything else, and like everything has its place. So when we get together, I can hear her vision, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can make it look like this. I can put this in there, and I could use ChatGPT to help me, boom, put that in there, and create the entire process. And when we have like the entire production, then we could show it, and then that'd be just great. And then and all of that's going in my head, and then I show Kat the output, and she's like, "Wait, how'd you do that?" And it was like I'm just hearing her words, seeing her direction, and I put it into place from my perspective because I'm not a great writer. I'm not a great storyteller verbally or uh, written language, narrative. Like I'm more of like the apps guy. Like I could put all the apps together. Oh, this is what you need to see. I could put it there, and I could put it there, and I could use this to make this look like that. And then I could also use ChatGPT to talk to each of those apps in their language, so we could get the best of the best in each part, and then boom, spit it out. And I think that's why we have. And most of my prompts come from Lewis, and then me and Adam will go back and forth with the creative design and like how it should look. And then when you put us all together, it puts out something like really great. And sometimes they didn't even know they were part of the process, but that's kind of how it goes.
That's how we work sometimes, though. It's like, hey,
I love
everybody
it.
relies on their skill set. And because we've built this community of like minded creatives, it doesn't necessarily matter whether it's, hey, you're doing the prompting, you're doing the music, you're doing the storytelling, you're doing the visuals. We all kind of figure out a way to kind of piece it together. For me, I think that I do a good job of the visual storytelling, but I don't know how to come up with that narrative sometimes. It's difficult for me. I can see what this scene needs to look like, but I don't know how to build it into a more cohesive, larger story. I wonder what makes a story stick for you, Kat.
Oh, that's a really cool question because I feel like that's a lot of when I think that's a lot of us, right? Like we're drawn to visual storytelling or visual design or visual um, experiences. Because I don't want to necessarily say like it doesn't have to be like a narrative to be storytelling. It could also just be an experience. It could make you feel a certain way or make you think about something differently. And what I call that is like that's my philosophy of like the magic idea. Like an idea is magical. What makes a story stick is when it has that emotional resonance. It makes you feel something a certain way, it connects to you emotionally, and it has that thematic relevance. It makes you think about something in a new way, differently, or articulates something back to you that you're like, oh, that's what that feeling is, or that's what that means. And when we combine both of those things, when a story has those two things, I think that's when it sticks. But um, a lot of folks wonder, especially like students that are drawn to film school and cinematic storytelling, or clients of mine, like folks that have written books, and they're like, I think this book could be a movie or a TV show, but I don't know how to get it there. And um, the place that I like to start is that zoomed out place of like, here's what's going to connect with your audience. That's what's going to create a story that is commercially viable. It's my opinion. It's from my years of experience. It's not like scientific, but it's like when a story has that, that's like the je ne sais quoi. That's like the stickiness that it's like, yes, we get it. And that's what makes, I think, like classics, instant classics, or the timeless stuff feel timeless and relevant and resonant because we still connect to it in those ways after all these years. But the way to engineer that from like a narrative or writing perspective is to think about what are those components that go into that. And that's how you really build that story. When you start with a narrative and you want to focus on something basic, I always recommend going back to what, many of us have known since we, before we started reading, when we first heard stories and we started to develop our language skills. It's like, I think we tend to tell stories that have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and we might not always start in the same place, but there is a certain way that stories tend to flow across cultures, across generations. Oral storytelling, going back to like ancient times and the ancient traditions, all the way right up to the current moment, when we talk about the stories that we're starting to put together in diverse media landscapes. But when we focus on like that beginning, that middle, that end, it's like, okay, so I should create something that might have like these components to it, but what goes into that container? I like to approach it, and this might just be my bias, like from my experience in Hollywood. I like to approach it with a character. I feel like having a character experience something, whether it's going to be quote unquote narrative driven or not, like more like experimental, even having that character that we can like connect to or project onto or root for or relate to can drive the whole experience. And then we can use that character as our vessel to develop like a goal or an objective or whatever journey they go through